All right. Okay, so I didn't practice this at all. So here we go. So today I'm going to talk about views and how views looks in Drupal 8. Things are pretty similar if you used views before in a previous version of Drupal. But first of all, let's talk about what views actually is. And in the documentation, it says the views module allows administrators and site designers to create and manage and display lists of content. And that doesn't make as much sense to me as, or more simply, it's an interface to build queries. So as you'll see, some direct correlation between writing a SQL query and an interface that Views offers. So in Drupal 8, it's now in core. It is no longer something that you have to go and download from Contrib. What's nice about this is that out of the box, it makes Drupal 8, along with content types being built in, these two modules kind of make Drupal what it, useful. So out of the gate, there's a lot of things that are being used in core now. So administration pages use views, the taxonomy term pages use views. And what's nice about that is you can actually go in and modify those to work however you want to. You don't have to override anything necessarily. You can just go in and modify them as you like. Some of the things that you can build with views, recent content list blocks, staff listing pages, image slideshows, tables of products, RSS feeds, or other data types like JSON. And then, of course, this is also extensible from different modules from Contrib. And then as we get into this, you'll see there's going to be many different what Views calls displays, which are the different types of views that you can build, whether it be a page, a block that you want to appear in a sidebar, a feed, like I said before, whether it be an RSS feed, whether it be a JSON feed. There's attachments, which kind of are a way to chain multiple different types of views. So the best example of this I've seen is if you've seen like a featured stories listing where the first item has an image in the title, and then they want to have the older stories just have the title link. That's kind of how you would build it with Drupal and Views. And then as far as the formats go, you can build out, these are just the default ones that are built in, a grid, which is essentially just a table, but then each row result is combined in a single table cell, TD tag, HTML lists, tables, which is more kind of like the tabular style for data lists, unformatted, which is just wraps everything in a div, and then of course there's even more formats available from Contrib. So like I said earlier, the Views is just kind of an interface for building queries. So you'll see this is just a simple select query to pull node titles and a username associated to that node title with an inner join and a couple arguments in an order. And how those kind of map out, as you'll see in the demonstration, the select is essentially the fields, the from a view type, inner join is a relationship, the where is a filter, and then there's also an additional contextual filter, which you can pass arguments to. That's what that arg function is. And then the sort is the order by. So it's easiest to show how to use views by actually demonstrating it rather than talking about it. So the first things first, I'm going to build out a page view that just, let me give you some background on. This is the site that Dan had put together with some content types. And I think the content types that he had listed or created was, it was an event and presenters. And each event had a presenter, it had a date field, and some just general description, and also a registration link. So to be able to display these appropriately, right now we have no content showing up on our site. So this is our homepage with nothing. So typically what you'd want to do is, let's say we want to list all of our upcoming events for someone coming to the site for the first time. So we'll go ahead and go to Views, add new view, And so since this is going to be for events, I like to group my views by the content type. So that'll be the name. I don't really care about a description. I want to show content. You can see there's a bunch of different types of information you can display. But I want to do content. And specifically, I want to do event content. And for now, I'm going to leave it unsorted. And I know I want to create a page. So it pre-populates the page title and the path for me. And then it also sets items to display to 10, and it has a pager. So just in case we have more than 10 events, right now I think I only have 5 or 6, so it's not going to really trigger that, but we'll leave that set. This display format, we'll talk about this a little bit. For now, I'm going to leave it as teasers and an unformatted list. So that's the div, and I'm just going to say save and edit. So this page can be a bit overwhelming for the first time seeing a views page with a bunch of different things to click on and settings. But for now, with just those settings that I set, if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see a preview of the result set that I'll get. So we have, like I said, 5 events, talking events with 2 different speakers. And so out of the gate, let's just run through this and I'll talk about these different things. Title, that was the thing that was pre-populated for me. And I went with unformatted list. And you can see here there's the alternatives. And then each format has its own set of settings. And we'll just leave these as default for now. I don't want to get too far into that stuff yet. Since we're just showing content, we have it teasers. Fields, as if we have show content selected, fields is disabled since we're using just the built-in view modes. And then our filter criteria. So we want to make sure that it's only showing published events and then the content type event. And then sort criteria right now is blank. So I want to make sure that when someone sees our listing that it's being sorted by the upcoming date. So let's go ahead and event, filter this down. You'll see this is our date field event. By selecting that and then apply to all displays. I want to make sure that it's sorting from the upcoming date, the closest date, and then we can set the granularity. I'm going to just leave it at hour and then apply to all displays. And you'll notice down here now that each event is now sorted by date appropriately. So from the 12th to the 28th of this month. And then from that, there's nothing else that I really need to change. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. I'm going to load up the home page. And nothing is here because I have to set the home page path. So I'm going to set it to event, which is the path that was predefined for us. And so now if I refresh the home page, I get my list of events. And so people can come and click on our event and then see the presenter, some more information, and the registration link. So what's cool about views is when you group things in a logical way, and like I said, I like grouping mine by content type. From this view, I can quickly add a new display. You'll see here's the attachment block. And there's a couple other ones which I haven't discussed, which come in from some core modules that are enabled, a feed or a page. And I want to create a feed so people can subscribe with their RSS feed readers or calendars to our stuff. And so just by doing that one thing, this feed display, it has a few different settings in a page display. It inherits now all of the settings that I had previously for my page. So you'll see my content, my sort criteria, date ascending is still in there. All of my filter criteria and all this, and the content settings are still the same. The format did change to RSS feed. And on here with core, you have 2 options of RSS or OPML feed. Like I said, there's contrib modules to extend that to JSON or XML or different data formats. So I'm just going to leave that as is. I do need to set, since this is technically a derivative of page, I need to set a path, so I'm just going to name it feed and hit apply. And then everything else I can ignore. And then if I come down to my preview, you can see it has an output of all the XML required for an RSS feed. I'll just go ahead and save it. And then just to show you that this works, if I go to my site, it loads in the RSS feed. So pretty much for nearly no work, based off my previous view, I have an RSS feed for our site. So real quickly, we can build out some fundamental functionality to our site. And I think on the next display I'm going to build is I'm going to create an inheriting block view. So let's say I wanted to be able to display a list of the 3 soonest, I don't know how to say that, upcoming events that we have scheduled. So if you're looking at an event over in the sidebar, maybe we want to display the 3 that are closest to occurring. So again, I'm just going to create another view based off of, this one will base it off of feed, and it's just block, and we'll have some more settings on here. I'm going to do things a little bit different. First, I want to change the title. I'm going to name it upcoming. Yeah.
Because you had feed chosen when you clicked add, it based it off of feed.
I believe how it works, and I haven't fully tested this, is it bases it off of whatever the master, even though you can't see this and you can actually enable it in settings, there's what's called a master view template, and that's what everything is inheriting from. I actually misspoke. I should have said it inherited from the master view. But by default, that's where it comes from. So I think you can also duplicate a specific. So like if I had some settings that were only in feed, maybe I had some additional sort criteria, and I wanted to have that carry over into the block view, I could duplicate this as a block. So.
Did you set the access in your feed settings and I just missed it? Or?
No, I haven't set any of that stuff yet. That was just whatever was set by default.
So it's a default now.
Right. So, and I think view published content is whenever you create any sort of view, that's the default thing it starts with.
Yeah, we had to set it. We wouldn't.
Oh, really?
English is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an improvement. I haven't set either. That's good.
Yeah, it's a good catch. Okay, so let's build out the block. So I could go in here and, well, first let me change this real quick. I know I want to do an HTML list rather than just wrapping it in a div, because it makes more sense. And again, see, we have some different settings now. Since we're using the list style, we can add a row class, view row classes, and we can select between an unordered list or an ordered list. And we can also set a CSS class for the wrapper or the list itself. Since I don't really care about the styling at this point, I'm just going to hit apply. And now for the content display type, I'm going to set this to fields. This is going to be a little bit different. Oops. Let's talk about something else real quick before we do this. One thing you'll see with views is, like I was saying, your views are inheriting from another view in this display collection. So if you want to do something that's different, you need to make sure to set this to override whatever the parent is. So if I was to come in here and select fields and hit apply to all displays, it would undo everything that I had done previously. So it would switch my page and my feed display type to use fields instead of the content. So it's just one of those things that you quickly learn is very frustrating. So you pay attention to it. So I'm just going to set this block. I want it to function differently than the previous two. I'm going to set it to fields and apply to this display. And this again has its own settings. There is a ton of settings on here, and I'm not going to talk about each individual one. It's one of those things they're fairly well documented now. And so you can just read through and see what each one does. There's going to be a lot of experimenting when it comes to using views for the first time. So you can see that unlocked now, this fields area here, and by default it gives me the title. So if I scroll down to the bottom here to see my preview, you see I have my title has changed, and now I have my list view with my bulleted list. And then now it's just showing the titles being linked to their own content. So that's how this changes. So if I was to go into title here, you can see this has its own settings. You can change the formatter since this is a title field. This is the option that linked to the content. And there's you can change the style settings. And these are usually true for almost all different field types. As you'll see, these are kind of like the settings that you can always find. You can customize the field that is output to. So if I wanted to have it as an H2, I could change that there and it would change the HTML for me. You can add a CSS class to the H2. So you can get really specific now with what you want to do or how you want that content to be displayed. So I'm fine with it as it is. And again, make sure that this is this block only. Apply to this display. Nothing changed because I left it the same. But now I want to also include the date along with the title. So I'm going to do event to narrow this down. And that's my date. It appears in the content type event. Apply to this display. And once you set override for a certain set, so like I had already set that for the field set, it is now just by default doing it as an override. Since this is a date field, it has its own formatters. So I could do time ago, plain, or custom, or default. And right now I'll just leave it for default. I don't really care about the time zone right now. But I maybe want to just show a different format. Again, these are the same settings as the title field. I'm going to apply to this display, scroll down here, and you can see it's showing that now with the date. And what's cool about the fields is you have a lot more fine-grained control over how these things are displayed than you do with the having it output by the default view modes like teaser, default, or whatever else you define in your content type. So from that, I know I want to show, let's see, I only want to show the 3 rather than showing 10 with a pager. So again, block override, display specified number of items. I want to show 3. And then again, remember this is like the same thing as writing limit in your SQL query. And so scroll down here again, and you'll see I have the 3. Oh, one thing I didn't talk about, you can actually turn on the ability to see what the actual query will look like. So you could take this and pop it into your MySQL command line. With a few exceptions, you have to remove these ones with the curly braces on them. But then that will actually run and return the same data set that you're actually requesting. You can see all the different information.
Is that like a Devel module?
No, it's actually built into views. I'll show you real quick.
Do you need to say that?
I just opened a new tab. So if I go into view settings, sorry, this was from the views listing page. Go into settings up here. You'll see there's a few options on here. This is to show the master display. That's the one I was talking about. In previous versions of Drupal with views, this was on by default. I don't know if they decided that it caused confusion as to what it was, so it's disabled now. But you can turn that on if you want to see what the master display is. Show advanced display settings. Allow embedded displays. I cannot. Oh, this was using views embed. This is actually if you want to programmatically render a view, this is what you would check on to allow for that. That's a little bit more advanced than what we're going to get into. But down here, these are all default settings. And this was the show SQL query. So you can have it above or below the preview. And that's the only thing I had turned on from that. So back on our display, I think everything is as we want it to be for now. So I'll hit save. So now if I go to our block layout, like you would for any other block, I know I want it to appear in our first side, our sidebar first region. Place block. And then scroll down. I know I have events, and I probably didn't name it. That's going to be a problem. Let me name it first, so that it's easier to coming block. Save. Refresh this. And so I have my event upcoming block. I'm just going to place it. I'm going to leave everything as is. I don't care which pages or anything it appears on. And I'm going to save this block. I don't think I have to save it again. So now if I go to our home page, it should, in the left column, now be showing our block. And you can see with the contextual, since I'm logged in, I get the contextual links. You can quickly access the edit view page. If you want to make an adjustment to your view, and you can see this one also has it. Got an overlap. Oh well. I promise you, it's there. So that's just from those few things. It really didn't take me that long, and I was talking the whole time. I was able to add some additional functionality. Okay, so now we have our site somewhat functional. So somebody comes to our site. I can't find my page now. Let me go back to the home page. Somebody can come and view our content. They can see, hey, look, here's the upcoming ones in case I want to attend. But there's something that on this page, it's not really, I have a image field, I have a bio, and also I think those are the three fields for my presenter. Right now it's only showing just the name. And with the default view modes from the content types, there's not a lot of options, and I know because this is an entity reference field, there's not a lot of options for displaying this better than this. I mean, you can render the entire entity, but then again, you have to use the view modes. But I want to have a little bit more control over how it's displayed, kind of like what we did for our upcoming event block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to our views listing page. And since I'm going to be building something using our presenter content type, I'm going to create a whole new view collection named presenter. And so I know I want it to be content. And this time I know I want it to be presenter content type. I don't really care about sorting, so I'll leave it unsorted. And what I want to create is a block. And then the title doesn't matter. Right, so what I'm essentially trying to do is I want to be able to break out the presenter content and show it in the right sidebar. So with the view modes, you can't do that. But with views, you can build out a block and pass an argument for whatever view or whatever piece of content you're looking at. And then also throw in that argument of the node ID to pull in information from that piece of content. And this is going to show how relationships and contextual filters come into play when building out views. So this adds a lot more flexibility and a possibility for building out different views. I know I only want to show one. I probably don't need to set this, but I'm only going to show one. And just leave everything else as it is for now, because I know I'm going to use fields. So I've got my base view built, unformatted settings, fields. And so right now it's just showing presenter, and it's showing one of them. So to build this relationship, I need to say, with this presenter, I want to have it pull in the association to the event. And with that, I'm going to pull up my relationships. This can get kind of confusing. It's one of those things that I still have to kind of mess around with and make sure that it's functioning properly. And even now, I have a backup ready, just in case I can't figure this out live. So let's see. I know I want to pull in the field event presenter. So content, this is the thing. It's either referenced from or using. That's the distinction. And I want to say it's the referenced. So I'm going to apply to all displays since there's only one display right now. And I can require this relationship. So if there's any items that don't have this relationship associated to it, it will eliminate them. So on this one, it doesn't really matter, but I'll go ahead and check it. So what this does is this now opens up some functionality within our contextual filters. And contextual filters are, like I said, those dynamic arguments that we want to pass. And so what I know I want to pass is a node ID. Oops, not node. So node ID. Apply to all displays. And this is what it unlocks. It unlocks this drop-down for relationship. You can see we have my field event presenter available. So I'm gonna have that pass in. And this is, you can force a lot of different things to happen if this filter is not available. And I still don't understand this, but technically our filter is not available, even though the node ID is getting passed when we see our piece of content. You can see it's up here in the URL bar is the node 13. So even if you have an alias, it's still passing that node variable in our get string behind the scenes. But I still want to show, let's see, I want to provide a default value. And from this, I know it's coming in from, they have one built in because this is a commonly done method, content ID from URL. And so what that'll do is that'll grab that numerical 13 value and pass it as an argument to our view. And so go ahead and save this. If I come back to here, I'll see, so node number 13. I can scroll down here to my preview and you see there's nothing there right now. But if I pass in that numerical value to kind of mimic it being that page, I can update preview and can see I did the wrong relationship. So let's remove this real quick. And remove. So we'll do using. Content from ID. Relationship, apply to all displays. So now you can see it left my argument in there, update preview, and I'm getting Chuck Butter. So real quickly, I'm going to add in some additional fields. So I want to show the image that I know that I have on here. So I'm going to go and select image.
Wait, presenter image.
Oh. Oh yeah, you're right. That's for the article. I don't care about the relationship for this specific instance because it's going to pull it in regardless. Formatter image. If you have image styles, these are just the default ones that come with it. But if you've defined different image styles, this is where they'll be available. I'm going to say large. Link image. So I can link it either to the content or the file itself. This means this instance being the content, it would be linking to the actual presenter node. So I'm going to do that if they want to read more about the presenter. And I'll leave everything else the same. So if we scroll down here, we'll see we have Chuck Butter and his picture. One more thing I want to add on here, I think, is the bio, presenter bio. This is a text area field, so there's a couple different options. I think it's just a plain text formatter. I'll leave that all the same. You can see Chuck Butter, picture, and then down here is the bio. One thing with the fields, and with most of these that have this drop down with the add, you can reorder things. So if I want, for instance, the presenter image to appear above the title, I can come in here and drag and drop, then also quickly remove things and apply to displays. And you can see down here in the content, it's reordered things. The same thing goes for filter criteria and sort criteria. You can change the priorities. All this stuff I'm going to leave the same. Save this. And then go into our block layout again. And I want to find our sidebar second. We have nothing in it right now. I know that's the one on the right. I'm going to come in here for presenter. I didn't name it, but I know this is it because there's only one view. I don't want to display the title, which is the default action. And then we won't go into this because it's not about blocks, but I only want it to appear on event content types. Save this block. Okay. So now if I refresh this page, you can see it's pulling in our presenter block. And so if we were to go to a different one, let's see, with, yeah, so you can see it pulls in our other presenter, Jody Black, for Math Talk. And that is, let's see here. Let me get back to here. Advanced view block. So that's the gist on getting a lot of blocks, or excuse me, a lot of views working. There's a number of things I didn't go into yet, and I can actually, let me run through some of this stuff just to give you an idea of what the functionality is. For the most part, you're going to be creating either pages or blocks when it comes to creating view types. There's, I mean, only a few times where I've been using Drupal for 7 years, and I think I've used attachment once. In entity reference a couple times. I know entity reference in this case is for changing the filter types. If you have an entity reference field, and for instance, and let's say it's referencing presenters, and you only want to show presenters associated to a certain taxonomy, that's where you could build out that view to do that, and you can declare in your content type field for the entity reference to use that view to filter the list. But again, one of those things that I think I've used 2 or 3 times. So your bread and butter is going to be your blocks and your pages. And something that I've learned recently is to use blocks more frequently than pages, because there's a lot of issues when it comes to building out a views page that it doesn't fully function like you would think if you have like a static page node. It doesn't function in the same way. It's not as flexible. You can't easily add content. Let me pull up a page view real quick. So if you have like a site, if you may be the site administrator, but if you have content editors that don't really have high-level access, then maybe they're just only creating nodes. Let's see, where's my events? The only way to add content to the top, so like let's say I wanted to have a blurb welcoming people to my site at the top of my homepage, they would have to have views access to do this. And this, you can see, since this is a page view, you have a few different options with header. So you can come in here and add different types of things. You can add another view, messages. I think there's a custom unfiltered text.
Block is easier because then you just include that on a normal page.
Right.
They would type in their content wherever they want.
Right. So they can, if they want to create an about page, and the about page has a listing of the presenters, they can go and write their about content. They won't see the presenter information when they're editing the page, but then when they save it, it's just there. And it's replicatable. You can move it around as you want. You can. It's one of those things you don't have to duplicate a lot of stuff with. So it's just generally better to use a block. It's just what I've found. So again, this is where you would. I did apply to all displays, which was a mistake, but there we go. So you can see that there'll be now content that says test in the header. Some other bits in here, the advanced section, there's a lot of things in here that are, you'll use contextual filters a lot, you use relationships a lot. Expose form, you can expose your different filter types or filter criteria. So for instance, on this one, if I wanted it to be a listing where they could, let's see, do different things other than events. Like maybe it was a list of every piece of content on the site. And actually, I'll show you an example because the admin content area does this. You can expose different filter criteria so that a user can come on and do this. So I want to search filter by article types. We don't have any. Let me pick a better example. I only want to show event types. So you can see this is only showing my events. But you can do that on the front end as well. And that's, you can show that. Let's see, where did I lost my page? Okay, so, and this is basically saying you can expose the form in a block, yes or no, and the style. Again, it's one of those things that you just kind of have to mess with to get it to function however you're wanting. There's a number of settings to do that. The other bits, literally other, the machine name for this specific display. So this is the page. You can see it automatically gives it a page_1. You can change that. That's the machine name. This is referenced for the templating. This is referenced for the placement. If I was to come in here, and I know we've already placed this upcoming block in one of our regions. If I was to come in here after the fact and change this machine name, you'll see, well, let me just do it. Like if I wanted to give it a more sensical name like upcoming events and apply and save that. Where we once saw our upcoming event block, if I refresh the page, we now get this message that says this block is broken or missing because that value is stored in the database and that's what it's using to build it. So now you have to go in there into your block layout. You get this big fat error and you have to remove it. It says broken or missing. And I think that error for some reason seems to be persistent even after deleting it. If you do make this mistake and you remember the machine name that you had it once set to, you can come in here and set it back. I found this out yesterday.
Does it go away if you clear cache?
It does, but then I've had it come back. And I don't know if it was just because I did something else, but it seems to be fairly persistent. So.
Cleared was cleared.
Yeah, I know it's gone away, but like I said, I've had it come back.
I've had some weird issues with Drupal 8, like it really caches stuff hard.
Yeah, and this is, I think I have all the developer caching stuff like on for this.
Cache hard.
Yeah, cache hard. So you can see like I changed that name back and it put everything back where it belongs. So you can also enable Ajax. So if, for instance, we had this listing block, well, let's just do it. Let's change this back to pager. Leave everything else as is. You can see now we should have a pager since we have more than 3 events and we have this pager here. This actually uses Ajax on the preview, but if we were to look at it on the front end, oh, no, things are still broken. This takes a while sometimes. Anyway, if we were to set this to Ajax, by default it would reload the entire page if we did the pager. You can have it just Ajax out of the box to do this dynamic style that you're seeing right here without a page refresh. I don't know what hide attachments and summary are.
So Ajax is good for a pager function.
Right, so if you want the user to stay on the page while they're cycling through stuff, that's what you would do.
Also good if you have a filter and you want to filter content without reloading the page.
Right.
You could use Ajax.
So that the visitor can filter the content.
Yeah, so
Right.
They're looking at a list of events and they say, well, I just want the basics, they don't have to reload the content.
Right, so those exposed filters also benefit from the Ajax being enabled. Contextual links. This is just that floating pencil. When you hover over this, this is what it's talking about. So you can disable access to that. I'm not sure why you would, but you have that ability. Aggregation. This is something I know I've used before. And oh, that's right. It also aids in if you're running a query and you get a lot of duplicate values that are essentially the same, referencing the same node. So like node ID 13 appears 5 different times. This can help cut down on those duplicate entries. I cannot remember specifically. I'm not reading the description.
That's another thing. I've used this before. I can't remember what for though. It's
Yeah.
really odd. It's like you show.
Yeah, you figured this out a couple weeks ago. You have ran across this.
It was an e-commerce site, so it was like you show like the number of results that had like for a certain field in the list. Like you say you had like a list that had like 4 fields. And
That's right.
You wanted to show that aggregate of like when it had the value, the certain field had a value. It will show like 10 likes or whatever.
Yeah. So basically, you're going to have to Google this because I can't quite explain it.
But
Yeah.
you won't know what it's
Yeah.
called.
Someone will tell you you need it when you're having problems. You can come on here and set some SQL. This is where you can set the distinct. If you've ever done anything with distinct queries, it's hit or miss, honestly. This is one of those things, again, where you want to cut down on duplicate entries. It really seems to work infrequently, in my experience. And it's really it's really taxing to use anyway. So unless you absolutely need it for a small query, generally don't use it.
Sometimes, like when you hit this, you just need to. I think you showed it earlier. You turn on where it actually shows you the SQL it's writing,
Right.
and then maybe it sometimes works better to like do whatever it's hook query alter to actually alter the query.
Right.
Because it's fairly good in writing queries, but sometimes they'll write one and you look at it and you're like, oh, I see why it's a duplicate. I mean, that's a complicated query actually, but
Right. So
they'll get stupid and actually like duplicate and like make it really bad.
correct. Well said. It'll make it really bad. So I don't know if this is going to show any difference in time, such a small data set, but it's 3.43 right now. I'm just going to set this to distinct.
It's kind of like a quick and dirty way to fix it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, you can see it doubled the execution time just for such a simple return. So basically, stay out of don't use distinct. Caching, you can set the caching granularity, whether it be none whatsoever, which in some cases that's what you want, tag-based, which is the default, or time-based. CSS class, if you want to add a class to I believe this adds it to the wrapper for the entire view. You'll see one thing if you're into theming, which I will talk about in a second. Views, although it's tremendously better than it once was, outputs a ton of markup. So let's see where our actual view begins. So I think it's right about here. But all of this stuff is just to get down to this single entry. I have all of the default settings. If you come up to see settings for fields that provide default wrapper elements, you can uncheck this, apply it, and it'll knock out some of them. You can see it now. It's not actually doing anything. It's just kind of inlining it. So now everything, there's no wrapper really, and it cut down on some of the stuff, the tags. But this is another one of those things that if you're really picky about your HTML output, you're going to be spending some time rewriting your templates for your views. And that brings me to my next point. Views in Drupal 8 changed its templating style. One big omission from this other section, there used to be the ability to see the inheritance structure for your view. So I believe it started at the view display, and then it kind of went down to the by row, and then by each individual field, it would show you what template name you'd want to override. Hey, there's a message from my mom. Let me turn this off real quick. So yeah, it would give you a kind of like an indicator, a UI indicator on what to name your file to override your views, and that's kind of gone. What they're trying, even though it's technically still there, and I'll provide you with a link to kind of figure out the pattern to override those things. I believe I have twig.
You're saying what TPL or
Right. What the twig file is. Yeah. What was.
The one it's using, and also it's
Oh, I don't have it turned on.
how to name it, like it's cascading.
oh, like page dash.
Right. Except view. Justin, do you? I just learned this last week. There's like this new. I don't know. Maybe it's not new, but like this debugging mode you can set. Does that actually output it in the markup?
It doesn't. It does, but it's a different style. And that's.
I know that works in 7 too now.
Oh, did they backport it?
Yeah. Like if you put that in your settings.php, whatever it is, setting call, I don't know what the name is. I should show it later, but yes. So that's like the best thing ever. It basically outputs like your template naming in the markup, which saves so much time.
Like
Oops.
yeah.
I don't know how to. I need to want to override this template. I don't know because it's this weird module.
Yeah, usually it's pretty good. There are a couple instances where it doesn't give you, it tells you where it's outputting from, but it won't give you the suggestions that you want. So it's probably, it's probably still being worked on, I assume.
I'm going to try and turn it on real quick. I think it's twig config. And then debug.
The themers were telling me about last week. I'm like,
So.
how do I not know about this?
They're teaching you.
Oh yeah, that's a normal thing.
Is it?
Usually it's something from in JavaScript.
Yeah, this is one of those things like I want to do like a small talk on is how to turn on all these developer functions. So now you can see like all of these HTML comments. Oops, where's my, let me get to something that I know is going to show something. So now the way to do this is to turn on that twig debugging, and you'll see these different file name suggestions. So like if you want to override the field, this is kind of like, so this would override every field, and then it gets more specific as it goes up. And then you can see the X there to see which one it's actually using for this particular field. It's using field node title. This is kind of like the similar idea to what it used to be with views. It became, the names were ridiculously long. And that's where the value of naming your machine names, rather than doing block one or whatever, it made a lot more sense to name it something that was more sensical to what you were actually trying to display, so you could find it then in your template. You'd have like 30 of these view templates in your theme. But this is what they're trying to promote is using the built-in twig templates. And you can see here's one for views. They showed like the generic high-level one. So this is, since we know this was a list, you can see views, view list.html.twig. But they're not showing like the granularity output for like if you wanted to just target this specific view. So it'd be like view views, events list or something, or even more specific than that with the machine name as well. That's what's gone. And I think on my, okay, let's see. I found an article talking about how that went away. And they give you kind of the format down here, naming views templates. So you can see like, this is what you're shown in the twig debugging, this base template name, html.twig. And then you can see how it gets more specific. So if I was to do base template name, view machine name, and then so forth on up to get down to like display ID. So that's kind of, and you can see some examples down here. But I kind of hope they bring back that ability to just see it here, because it was really useful. But I don't know, it doesn't sound like it. I read some bug reports and it didn't seem like they were going to bring it back as a feature. They really want you to just use this, but again, it's kind of incomplete in my opinion. Let's see. And I think that's it. Yeah, I said use view, yeah, use block displays more than a page, group views by content type, and then the templating changes. And I think that rounds out, let me see here, make sure I'm not missing anything. hide block if empty. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Views is just something that you got to get into and mess around with. If you have an idea of what you want to output, just kind of work your way down from the top left on down and just work your way through the columns. And you'll be spending a lot of time here, a little bit of time here if you want to change the permissions, and some time here as well. But it's really, once you get it figured out, it's not that hard. It's just the user interface is intimidating. But that is views in a 30+ minute nutshell. Anyway, any questions? Any other questions? No? All right, that's it.